The rustle of her petticoats against the wooden planks of the train platform was the only sound that accompanied Penelope James as she checked her pocket watch for the 10th time in as many minutes. The year was 1875, and the Arizona Territory sun beat down mercilessly, making the wait even more unbearable. The station at Willow Creek was deserted save for an old station master who had long since stopped offering her sympathetic glances. Penelope had been waiting for 3 hours. Her trunk sat beside her, packed with all the possessions she had deemed worthy of her new life, a life that now seemed to be slipping through her fingers like the sand that blew across the barren landscape. "Miss, the last train's gone," the station master called from his office. "Won't be another until tomorrow afternoon." Penelope nodded but didn't move. Moving would mean accepting defeat, and she wasn't ready for that. Not yet. Not after she'd come all this way from Boston, leaving behind the comfortable life her parents had built for her. Not after she'd agreed to marry a man she'd only corresponded with for 8 months. The sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. Penelope dabbed at her forehead with her handkerchief, wishing she'd worn a more practical dress than the blue silk that now clung uncomfortably to her skin. In the distance, a cloud of dust rose from the desert floor. Penelope squinted, her heart quickening. A rider was approaching, the silhouette growing larger against the setting sun. She stood straighter, adjusted her hat, and steeled herself for whatever or whoever was coming. The rider approached at a gallop, slowing only when he reached the edge of town. Penelope could see him clearly now, tall and broad-shouldered atop a magnificent chestnut stallion. His face was obscured by the shadow of his hat, but there was no mistaking the confident way he sat in the saddle. He rode directly to the platform, pulling his horse to a stop just feet from where she stood. Dust swirled around them as he dismounted in one fluid motion, revealing a man with sun-bronzed skin and eyes as blue as the Montana sky. "Miss James." His voice was deep, tinged with a drawl that spoke of years in the West. "Yes," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "And you are—" He removed his hat, revealing dark blonde hair that curled slightly at the edges. "Briggs, Beau Patterson." He took a step toward her, his gaze unwavering. "Apologies for my tardiness. There was trouble on the North Trail." Before Penelope could respond, he closed the distance between them, his gaze sweeping over her in a way that made her breath catch. "You're mine now," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Let's go home." Penelope felt her cheeks flush with both indignation and something else she couldn't quite name. "I beg your pardon, Mr. Patterson. I don't recall agreeing to be anyone's possession." A flicker of surprise crossed his features, followed by the ghost of a smile. "Forgive me, Miss James. I meant to say that I'm here to escort you to your new home. Calvin Williams sent me in his stead." "Mr. Williams?" Penelope's stomach dropped. "I don't understand." "I'm here to marry Mr. Williams." "Why would he send someone else to collect me?" Beau's expression darkened. "I'm afraid there's been a change of plans. Calvin Williams was killed 3 days ago, stagecoach robbery." The platform seemed to tilt beneath Penelope's feet. She reached out, steadying herself against her trunk. "Dead, but that cannot be. We were to be married next week." "I'm sorry for your loss, Miss James." Beau's voice had softened. "Calvin was my friend. He asked me to look after his affairs should anything happen to him." "That includes ensuring your safety and comfort." Penelope's mind raced. She was alone in a territory she knew nothing about, with no fiancé, no home, and only the money she had brought with her. "What am I to do now?" "You'll come with me to the Double P Ranch. I've prepared the guest cabin for you. Once you've had time to grieve and decide your next steps, I'll help you however I can." "The Double P, that's your ranch?" "Yes, madam. It borders what would have been your land with Calvin. We were neighbors and partners in some ventures." Penelope hesitated, weighing her limited options. Return to Boston in disgrace? Stay in this dusty outpost and do what exactly? Or trust this stranger who claimed to be her deceased fiancé's friend? "I have no choice, do I?" she finally said. "We all have choices, Miss James." but some are more practical than others. He reached for her trunk. "May I?" she nodded, and he hoisted it effortlessly onto his shoulder. "My horse can carry us both and the trunk for the ride to the ranch. It's not far, about 5 miles. Penelope glanced at the massive stallion. "Both of us." "On one horse. Unless you'd prefer to walk." There was that hint of a smile again. Resigned to her fate, Penelope allowed Beau to help her mount the horse. He positioned her sideways on the saddle before securing her trunk with ropes and mounting behind her. His arm came around her waist, and she stiffened at the improper contact. "My apologies for the familiarity, Miss James, but I need to ensure you don't fall." His breath was warm against her ear. As they rode away from the station, Penelope fought back tears. This was not how she had imagined beginning her new life in the West. She had expected to be greeted by Calvin Williams, a man whose letters had painted a picture of a gentle, educated rancher looking for a cultured wife to share his prosperity. Instead, she was pressed against a stranger whose very presence made her nerve-ending spark with an awareness she had never experienced before. The ride to the Double P Ranch was mostly silent, save for the occasional comment from Beau about the landscape or a warning about a rough patch in the trail. Penelope was acutely aware of his arm around her waist, the solid wall of his chest against her back. She told herself it was merely the shock of the day's events that had her heart racing, not the proximity of this rugged man who had claimed her with 3 simple words. As they crested a hill, the ranch came into view, a sprawling main house with several outbuildings, corrals filled with horses, and cattle grazing in the distance. It was larger and more impressive than Penelope had expected. "Welcome to the Double P," Beau said, his voice a rumble she could feel through her back. "It's quite something," she managed, taking in the scope of the operation. "Been in my family for 20 years. My father built it from nothing. I took over 5 years ago when he passed." They rode down to the main house, where a middle-aged woman emerged onto the porch, wiping her hands on her apron. "Mrs. Hollister," Beau called out, "we have a guest who will be staying with us for a while." The woman's eyebrows rose as she took in Penelope's fine dress and city appearance. "I'll ready the guest cabin right away, Mr. Patterson." Beau dismounted first, then reached up to help Penelope down. His hands spanned her waist, and for a moment he held her suspended in the air, their eyes locked. Then he lowered her gently to the ground, his hands lingering a beat too long. "Mrs. Hollister will show you to the cabin and help you get settled. You'll join me for dinner at 7 if you're feeling up to it." Penelope wanted to refuse, to retreat and lick her wounds in private, but the thought of sitting alone with her grief was even less appealing. "Thank you, Mr. Patterson, I would appreciate the company," he nodded, then turned to unstrap her trunk. "Mrs. Hollister, please show Miss James to her accommodations and see that she has everything she needs." The housekeeper beckoned to Penelope. "This way, miss." The cabin's just behind the main house. It's small but comfortable. As Penelope followed Mrs. Hollister, she felt Beau's eyes on her back. Something told her that her life had just taken a turn far more dramatic than even her journey west had prepared her for. The guest cabin was indeed small but surprisingly well appointed. A 4-poster bed dominated one wall, a small sitting area with 2 chairs and a table occupied another, and a washstand with a porcelain basin completed the main room. A separate room contained a hip bath and privacy screen. "Mr. Patterson had me freshen it up when we got word about poor Mr. Williams," Mrs. Hollister explained as she showed Penelope around. "He figured you might need a place to stay while you sorted things out." "He knew I was coming?" Penelope asked, surprised. "Oh yes, miss." Mr. Williams talked of little else these past months. He was mighty excited about his Boston bride. Mrs. Hollister's expression softened with sympathy. "Such a shame what happened. He was a good man." Penelope sank onto one of the chairs, suddenly overwhelmed. "Mrs. Hollister, I find myself in a most unusual predicament. I've come all this way to marry a man I've never met, only to discover he's no longer alive. I have no connections here, limited funds, and I'm at the mercy of Mr. Patterson's hospitality. The older woman patted her shoulder. Now don't you worry, Mr. Patterson is a man of his word. If he said he'll help you, then he will. He's not one for empty promises. But I know nothing about him. What would you like to know? Mrs. Hollister asked, moving to unpack Penelope's trunk. Is he married? Mrs. Hollister chuckled. No, miss, never has been, though not for lack of trying on the part of every eligible woman in 3 counties. He's devoted to this ranch almost to a fault. How old is he? 31 come November. Young to have accomplished so much, but that's Beau Patterson for you, determined as the day is long. Penelope digested this information. And his character, is he honorable as they come, miss? He's had his share of troubles, but he's never wavered from doing what's right. Mrs. Hollister hung a dress in the small wardrobe. Now, shall I draw you a bath before dinner? You must be exhausted from your journey. Penelope nodded gratefully. As Mrs. Hollister bustled about preparing the bath, Penelope found herself wondering what kind of man Beau Patterson truly was beneath his commanding exterior. And why, despite the shock and grief of losing her fiancé, she couldn't stop thinking about the way Beau's arms had felt around her as they rode to the ranch. By the time Penelope descended the main house's porch steps for dinner, the sun had set completely, leaving the ranch bathed in the silver glow of a nearly full moon. She had changed into a simpler dress of forest green, her hair freshly pinned with a few tendrils framing her face. Beau met her at the door, cleaned up from their earlier encounter. His hair was still damp from washing, and he'd changed into a clean shirt and vest. He still wore his gun belt, she noticed, as if he never truly let his guard down. Miss James, he greeted her with a slight bow. You look refreshed. I hope the accommodations are satisfactory. They are more than adequate, thank you. She followed him into a dining room where a table was set for 2. A chandelier with oil lamps cast a warm glow over the polished wood. I hope you don't mind dining alone with me, Beau said as he pulled out her chair. Mrs. Hollister has retired for the evening after preparing our meal. Penelope hesitated. In Boston, dining alone with a man to whom she wasn't related would be scandalous. But this wasn't Boston, and normal rules didn't seem to apply. Under the circumstances, I believe propriety can be somewhat relaxed. A small smile played at the corners of his mouth as he took his seat across from her. I find that most Eastern proprieties don't survive long in the territory. Out here, practicality trumps convention. So I'm learning, she replied as he poured her a glass of wine. They ate in companionable silence for a few minutes, a hearty stew with fresh baked bread that reminded Penelope how hungry she truly was. She had been too nervous to eat much on the train, and the events at the station had driven all thoughts of food from her mind. Mr. Patterson, she finally said, setting down her spoon. I feel I must address my situation directly. While I appreciate your hospitality, I cannot impose indefinitely, Beau nodded. I understand. Have you given thought to your plans? Not fully, she admitted. Returning to Boston is an option, though not one I prefer. I left with certain expectations of building a new life here. To return in failure seems defeating. And what were those expectations, if I may ask? Penelope considered the question. To be useful. To build something meaningful with a partner who valued my contributions. To escape the stifling confines of Boston society where a woman's worth is measured by her family name and dowry. Beau studied her, his blue eyes thoughtful. Calvin mentioned you were educated? Yes. I attended a women's college in Massachusetts. I studied literature, mathematics, and some sciences. Can you keep accounts? The question surprised her. Yes, quite well, actually. My father insisted I understand the financial aspects of running a household. Beau set down his wine glass. Miss James, I have a proposition for you. It's not marriage, he added quickly when her eyes widened. But it might allow you to stay in the territory with purpose while you decide your long-term plans. I'm listening. The double P needs someone to manage the books and correspondence. My foreman tried, but numbers aren't his strength. I've been handling it myself, but it takes time away from running the ranch. Would you consider taking on the role? I can offer a fair wage and continued use of the guest cabin. Penelope blinked in surprise. You would hire me, a woman you've just met. Calvin spoke highly of your intelligence and practical nature in his letters. He wasn't a man easily impressed. Beau leaned forward. Besides, I've learned to trust my instincts about people. They rarely lead me astray. And what do your instincts tell you about me, Mr. Patterson? His gaze held hers. That you're stronger than you appear, that you're adaptable, that you didn't come west looking for an easy life. Penelope felt warmth spread through her that had nothing to do with the wine. Your assessment is fair. When would you want me to begin? Tomorrow, if you're willing, I can show you the office and the books after breakfast. Then I accept your proposition, Mr. Patterson, on a trial basis, of course. Of course. He raised his glass. To new beginnings, Miss James. She clinked her glass against his. To new beginnings. As they finished their meal and moved to the parlor for coffee, Penelope felt some of the day's heaviness lift from her shoulders. She still mourned the loss of what might have been with Calvin Williams, but the prospect of staying and forging her own path appealed to her independent nature. Beau Patterson remained something of an enigma. His commanding presence and direct manner contrasted with moments of surprising gentleness and consideration. She found herself watching him as he built up the fire in the hearth, noting the efficient grace of his movements. "May I ask you something personal, Mr. Patterson?" she said as he handed her a cup of coffee and took a seat in the armchair opposite her. "You may ask. I reserve the right not to answer," she smiled at his candor. "Fair enough. Mrs. Hollister mentioned you've never married. Is there a particular reason, or has it simply not been a priority?" Beau took a sip of his coffee before answering. "Both, I suppose. When my father died, the ranch was in trouble. I focused all my energy on saving it than on making it prosper. As for finding the right woman," he shrugged. "The ladies in town are looking for security and status. They see the ranch, not the man who runs it." "That sounds familiar," Penelope said softly. "In Boston, men saw my father's shipping fortune, not me." Their eyes met in shared understanding. "What about you, Miss James? Why agree to marry a man you'd never met?" Calvin's letters revealed a thoughtful, intelligent man who wanted a true partner, not just a decorative wife. He spoke of building something together. She looked down at her hands. "And I suppose I was running away as much as I was running toward something. My parents had plans for me that didn't align with my own desires. An arranged marriage, of sorts, to a business associate's son. A mutually beneficial arrangement, my father called it." Beau's expression darkened. "People aren't commodities to be traded." "No, they're not." She met his gaze steadily. "Which is why I found your greeting at the station rather presumptuous." To her surprise, he laughed a rich, warm sound that transformed his face. "Touché, Miss James, I deserved that." His expression grew more serious. "The truth is, I was rattled. Calvin's death hit me hard, and then seeing you standing there, looking so out of place yet so determined, I spoke without thinking." "I accept your explanation, Mr. Patterson." Penelope found herself smiling. "And I suppose I should call you Beau if we're to work together." "I'd like that, Miss James." "Penelope," she corrected. "Or Penny, as my friends call me." "Penny," he repeated, and something in the way he said her name sent a shiver down her spine. The grandfather clock in the corner struck 10, breaking the moment. Penelope rose. "I should retire. It's been a long day, and it seems tomorrow will be busy as well." Beau stood immediately. "Of course, I'll walk you back to the cabin." Outside, the night air had cooled considerably. Without thinking, Penelope shivered, and Beau removed his jacket, draping it over her shoulders. It was warm from his body and carried the scent of soap, leather, and something uniquely him. "Thank you," she murmured, pulling it closer around her. They walked in silence across the yard to the guest cabin. At the door, Penelope removed the jacket and handed it back. "Thank you for everything, Beau. Your kindness has made an impossible day bearable." He took the jacket, his fingers brushing hers. "Get some rest, Penny. Tomorrow's a new day." As she closed the door behind her, Penelope leaned against it, heart racing from that brief contact. This was madness, she told herself. Her fiancé was barely cold in his grave, and here she was, fluttering like a schoolgirl over a man she'd just met. Yet as she prepared for bed, she couldn't help but wonder what the coming days would bring. One thing was certain: life in the Arizona Territory promised to be anything but predictable. The next morning dawned bright and clear. Penelope dressed in one of her simpler day dresses and made her way to the main house, where she found Beau already at the breakfast table, nursing a cup of coffee while reviewing some papers. He rose when she entered. "Good morning. Did you sleep well?" "Surprisingly, yes," she admitted, taking the seat he offered. "Better than I expected, given the circumstances." Mrs. Hollister appeared with a plate of eggs, bacon, and biscuits for Penelope. "Eat up, miss. Working days start early here." "Thank you, Mrs. Hollister. This looks wonderful." As they ate, Beau outlined the day ahead. "I thought I'd show you the office and the books this morning, then give you a tour of the ranch if you're interested. There's a lot of ground to cover, but it would help you understand the operation better." "I'd like that very much," Penelope said, surprised by her own enthusiasm. "I've never been on a working ranch before." After breakfast, Beau led her to a room off the main parlor that served as his office. A large desk dominated the space, covered with ledgers, correspondence, and maps. Bookshelves lined one wall, filled with an eclectic mix of literature, reference books, and leather-bound journals. "It's a bit chaotic," Beau admitted, clearing some papers from a chair for her. "I've been meaning to organize it properly, but there never seems to be time." Penelope surveyed the room with a practical eye. "Organization is something I excel at. May I?" At his nod, she moved to the desk and began sorting through the papers, quickly identifying categories. "You need separate ledgers for different aspects of the operation: cattle, horses, household expenses, payroll, and a filing system for correspondence." Beau watched her with evident approval. "I can see Calvin wasn't exaggerating about your capabilities." Penelope paused, a letter in her hand. "You mentioned he spoke of me. What exactly did he say?" Beau leaned against the desk. "That you were brilliant, beautiful, and not afraid to speak your mind, that he was lucky to have found a woman who could match him intellectually." He met her eyes. He was right about all of it. Penelope felt her cheeks warm at the compliment. "Thank you. I hope I can live up to that assessment in my work here." "I have no doubts." He straightened. "I'll leave you to get acquainted with the books while I check on some things outside. When you're ready for that tour, just come find me. Anyone can point you in the right direction." Left alone in the office, Penelope took a deep breath and rolled up her sleeves, metaphorically speaking. The disarray was a challenge she welcomed, a problem with a solution, unlike the more complicated emotions swirling within her. She spent the next few hours creating order from chaos, sorting papers, organizing ledgers, and making notes about inconsistencies she found in the bookkeeping. The work absorbed her completely, providing a welcome distraction from thoughts of what might have been with Calvin and the unsettling awareness she felt whenever Beau was near. By midday, she had made significant progress. Her stomach rumbled, reminding her she'd been working through the lunch hour. Setting aside the ledger she'd been reviewing, Penelope decided it was time to find Beau for that promised tour. Outside, the ranch was alive with activity. Men on horseback moved cattle in distant pastures, while closer to the main house, others worked with horses in the corrals. Penelope approached a young man who was mending a saddle on the porch of one of the outbuildings. "Excuse me," she called. "I'm looking for Mr. Patterson." The young man jumped to his feet, removing his hat. "Yes, madam. He's down at the breaking pen working with that new stallion. Just head that way," he pointed. "Past the barn. You can't miss it." Penelope thanked him and followed his directions. As she approached the breaking pen, she heard shouts and the thunder of hooves. Rounding the corner of the barn, she stopped in her tracks. Beau was in the center of a circular pen, his shirt clinging to his back with sweat as he worked with a magnificent black stallion. The horse was clearly wild, rearing and bucking, but Beau moved with it in an intricate dance of wills. His voice carried to her low, soothing, yet firm. Penelope watched, mesmerized, as man and beast circled each other. Beau never showed fear, even when the stallion charged him. He simply stood his ground or stepped aside at the last moment, always maintaining eye contact with the animal. Gradually, the horse's movements became less frantic. Beau extended his hand, palm up, and waited. The stallion snorted, pawing the ground, then inched forward to sniff his hand. "That's it," Beau murmured. "We're just getting to know each other." Penelope must have made some small sound because Beau's head turned slightly in her direction. The moment of distraction was all the stallion needed. It reared suddenly, hooves slashing the air inches from Beau's face. Penelope gasped, hand flying to her mouth. Beau recovered quickly, reasserting his dominance with a sharp command. The horse settled, though it still eyed him warily. Beau spoke to one of the men watching from the fence. "Take over, Jake. He's calmer now. Just keep doing what you saw me doing." With a final pat to the stallion's neck, Beau exited the pen and strode toward Penelope. His face was flushed with exertion, his hair damp with sweat, yet she thought she'd never seen a more compelling sight. "Enjoying the show?" he asked, a hint of amusement in his voice as he wiped his face with a bandana. "It was impressive," she admitted. "I've never seen anything like it. Horse breaking is about patience and understanding, not force. Show them respect and eventually they'll give it back." He gestured toward the main house. "Were you looking for me?" "Yes, I've made progress with the books and thought I might take you up on that tour. Let me clean up first. Meet me at the stables in 15 minutes. When Penelope arrived at the stables, Beau was waiting with 2 saddled horses, his chestnut stallion and a gentle-looking mare with a white blaze. "Do you ride?" he asked. Penelope eyed the mare uncertainly. "In Boston, I rode occasionally in the park, nothing like this. Daisy here is the gentlest horse on the ranch. She'll take good care of you." He offered his hand. "Trust me." Something in his expression made the question feel weightier than it should have. Penelope placed her hand in his. "I'm beginning to." He helped her mount, adjusting her skirts for modesty and comfort, then swung up onto his own horse. "We'll take it slow. Let me know if you need to stop." They rode at a leisurely pace, Beau pointing out features of the ranch and explaining its operations. The Double P encompassed thousands of acres, with grazing land, water sources, and different areas for cattle and horse breeding. Penelope listened attentively, asking questions that clearly impressed him with their insight. As they crested a hill overlooking a river valley, Beau reined in his horse. "This is my favorite spot on the ranch. My father brought me here when I was 8 years old and told me that someday all this would be mine to protect and nurture." Penelope took in the breathtaking view: rolling hills, the silver ribbon of river, cattle grazing peacefully in the distance. "It's beautiful. You must be very proud of what you've accomplished." "I am," he said simply, "but it's lonely sometimes." The admission, so plainly stated, touched something in Penelope. "I understand loneliness. Even surrounded by people in Boston, I often felt isolated. No one really saw me." "I see you, Penny," Beau said softly. Their eyes met, and the connection that sparked between them was almost tangible. Penelope looked away first, flustered by the intensity of her reaction. "We should head back," she suggested. "I still have work to do on those ledgers." Beau nodded, though reluctance showed in his expression. "There's a storm coming anyway. See those clouds to the west." On the ride back, Penelope found herself stealing glances at Beau's profile. In just one day, he had begun to occupy her thoughts in a way that was both troubling and exhilarating. She reminded herself that she was still in mourning for Calvin, still adjusting to her new circumstances. Any feelings for Beau Patterson were surely a product of gratitude and proximity, nothing more. Yet that night, as thunder rolled across the plains and rain lashed against her cabin windows, Penelope found herself wondering if Beau was awake in the main house, listening to the same storm, perhaps even thinking of her. The days fell into a pattern. Penelope spent mornings in the office, bringing order to the ranch's finances and correspondence. She discovered discrepancies that suggested someone had been skimming small amounts from the ranch's profits, though she wasn't yet certain who was responsible. Afternoons often included riding lessons from Beau, who proved to be a patient teacher. Under his guidance, Penelope gained confidence in the saddle, eventually accompanying him on longer rides around the property. Evenings were spent in quiet companionship dinner followed by reading or conversation in the parlor. Beau, she discovered, was well-read despite his frontier upbringing. His father had valued education and maintained a library that rivaled some in Boston. 2 weeks after her arrival, Penelope received a letter from her parents, forwarded from Calvin's address in town. They expressed condolences for her loss, but suggested she return to Boston immediately. Her father mentioned that George Whitfield, the business associate's son she'd fled from, was still interested in an arrangement. That evening, Penelope was unusually quiet at dinner. Beau noticed, of course. He noticed everything about her these days. Bad news. He asked as they moved to the parlor afterward. Penelope handed him the letter. "My parents want me to return to Boston." Beau read it, his expression darkening at the mention of George Whitfield. "And what do you want?" "I want to stay," she said without hesitation. "I've found purpose here. The work is engaging and she trailed off, not quite ready to voice the other reason she wanted to remain. "And you," Beau prompted, moving closer. Penelope met his gaze. "And I'm not ready to leave you." The admission hung between them, charged with possibility. Beau took her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "I don't want you to go, Penny. These past weeks, having you here has changed everything." He was close enough now that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. Her heart hammered against her ribs as he reached up to touch her cheek. "May I?" he whispered. She nodded, unable to speak. His lips met hers in a gentle kiss that quickly deepened as she responded. His arms encircled her waist, drawing her against him, and Penelope lost herself in the sensations coursing through her body. This was nothing like the chaste kisses she'd experienced in Boston drawing rooms. This was wild and sweet and dangerous all at once. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, Penelope pressed her forehead against his chest. "This is happening so fast. Calvin would want you to be happy," Beau finished. "He wasn't just my business partner, Penny. He was my friend. And I know he would approve of this of us if it meant you found joy." Penelope looked up at him, searching his face. "Are you certain? I wouldn't want you to feel that you're betraying his memory. The only betrayal would be denying what's growing between us out of some misplaced sense of guilt." He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "I'm falling in love with you, Penelope James. I think I started falling the moment I saw you standing alone on that platform, so determined and brave." Tears pricked at Penelope's eyes. "I'm falling in love with you too, Beau. And it terrifies me how much I want you." He kissed her again, more urgently this time, until Mrs. Hollister's pointed cough from the doorway reminded them they weren't alone. "I should go," Penelope said, flustered. "It's getting late." Beau reluctantly released her. "We'll talk more tomorrow." That night, alone in her cabin, Penelope confronted her feelings honestly for the first time. She had cared for Calvin through his letters, had been prepared to build a life with him. But what she felt for Beau was different, immediate, visceral, overwhelming. Was it disloyal to move on so quickly? Or was it, as Beau suggested, a chance at happiness that Calvin would have blessed? Her deliberations were interrupted by a sharp knock at the door. Wrapping a shawl around her nightdress, Penelope approached cautiously. "Who is it?" "It's Jake Miller, miss." "From the ranch. Mr. Patterson sent me to fetch you. There's trouble?" Alarmed, Penelope quickly dressed and followed Jake to the main house. Inside, she found Beau in the office with the sheriff and another man she didn't recognize. "Penny," Beau's face showed relief when he saw her. "I'm sorry to disturb you so late, but Sheriff Davis has news that concerns both of us." "Miss James," the sheriff nodded. "I'm afraid I have disturbing information about Calvin Williams' death. It wasn't a random stagecoach robbery as we initially believed." Penelope sank into a chair. What do you mean? We've arrested 2 men who were involved. They've confessed that they were hired to make William's death look like a robbery gone wrong. The sheriff glanced at Beau. They claim they were hired by someone who wanted Miss James for himself. George Whitfield, Penelope whispered, remembering the letter from her parents. Beau's expression hardened. How would he even know about Calvin, your parents? The sheriff said to Penelope. According to the men we arrested, someone from Boston provided details about William's travel plans and offered a substantial payment for his elimination. Penelope felt ill. My father? You're suggesting my father arranged to have Calvin murdered? We don't know that for certain, Sheriff Davis said carefully, but someone with connections to your family definitely had a hand in it. There's more, Beau said grimly. The men also admitted they were paid to return once you arrived and eliminate me as well, then take you back to Boston. Penelope gasped. No, we believe they're watching the ranch now, waiting for an opportunity. The sheriff nodded to the other man present. This is Marshal Blackwell from the Territorial Office. He's here to help us catch them before they can act. What should we do? Penelope asked, fighting to maintain her composure. For now, you stay here where we can protect you, Beau said firmly. The marshal has men positioned around the property. We'll draw them out. How? Marshal Blackwell spoke for the first time. We let them think they've found their opportunity. Word will reach them that Patterson is riding to town alone tomorrow morning. No, Penelope protested. That's too dangerous. Beau took her hand. I won't be alone. The marshal's men will be shadowing me. When they make their move, we'll be ready. And if something goes wrong? If you're hurt, or she couldn't bring herself to say the word killed, nothing will go wrong, Beau assured her, though she could see the concern behind his confident expression. But just in case, there's something I need to do tonight. He turned to the sheriff and marshal. Gentlemen, would you excuse us for a moment? When they had left the room, Beau took both of Penelope's hands in his. I had planned to do this differently, somewhere romantic with more preparation, but circumstances being what they are. He dropped to one knee before her. Penelope James, I know we've known each other only a short time, but I've never been more certain of anything in my life. I love you. Will you marry me? Penelope's breath caught. Beau, are you sure? This isn't just because of the danger. The danger only made me realize I couldn't wait another day to ask you. I want you by my side, Penny as my wife, my partner, my everything. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she nodded. Yes, I'll marry you. He rose and pulled her into his arms, kissing her with a passion that left no doubt about his feelings. When they separated, he reached into his pocket and withdrew a small box. This was my mother's, he said, opening it to reveal a delicate gold ring with a single pearl surrounded by tiny diamonds. It's not grand, but it's perfect, Penelope interrupted as he slid it onto her finger. Just perfect. The next morning dawned clear and cool. Penelope watched from the window of Beau's office as he mounted his horse and rode toward town, every fiber of her being urging him to turn back. Sheriff Davis stood beside her, ready to escort her to a safe location once Beau was out of sight. He'll be fine, Miss James, the sheriff assured her. Beau Patterson didn't get where he is by being careless. Penelope nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. The pearl ring on her finger caught the morning light, reminding her of all she stood to lose if anything went wrong. Hours passed with excruciating slowness. Penelope paced the confines of the small back room where she'd been hidden, jumping at every sound. When the door finally opened, she whirled around, heart in her throat. Beau stood there, dusty and disheveled but very much alive. It's over, he said simply. With a cry, Penelope flew into his arms. He held her tightly, his face buried in her hair. They took the bait, he explained when they finally separated. 3 men ambushed me on the road to town. The marshal's men were ready. Were you hurt? She examined him anxiously. Just a graze, he admitted, showing her a bandaged arm. Nothing serious. And the men, 2 are dead. The 3rd is in custody. He's already talking, confirming what we suspected about Whitfield's involvement. Penelope shuddered. I can't believe someone would go to such lengths." "Some men can't accept rejection," Beau said grimly. "But he won't threaten you again. The marshal is sending a full report to the federal authorities in Boston. Your parents' involvement, if any, will be investigated." Penelope felt a twinge of sadness at the thought of her parents possibly being implicated in Calvin's death. Despite their controlling nature, she had never imagined them capable of such a thing. "What happens now?" Beau smiled, the tension leaving his face. Now we get married if you're still willing." "More than willing," she assured him. "But don't you think we should wait a bit longer? People will talk." "Let them," Beau said with a shrug. "We know the truth of our hearts. Besides," he added with a grin, "I'm not letting you change your mind." 3 days later, Penelope stood beside Beau in the parlor of the Double P Ranch as the circuit preacher pronounced them husband and wife. Mrs. Hollister dabbed at her eyes as Beau kissed his bride, and the ranch hands cheered from the porch where they'd gathered to witness the ceremony. It wasn't the wedding Penelope had imagined when she left Boston, but as she looked up into Beau's loving eyes, she knew it was exactly where she was meant to be. 6 months later, Penelope stood on the platform at Willow Creek Station, watching as the train pulled in. Unlike her first time on this platform, she wasn't alone. Beau stood beside her, his arm around her waist. "Are you nervous?" he asked. "A little," she admitted. "It's been a long time." The train doors opened and passengers began to disembark. Penelope scanned the faces until she spotted the one she was looking for, a distinguished older gentleman who looked around uncertainly. "Father," she called, waving. Jonathan James turned at the sound of his daughter's voice. His face lit up with a smile as he made his way toward them. The investigation had cleared her father of direct involvement in Calvin's death, though George Whitfield and his father were now facing charges. Jonathan had written to Penelope, begging forgiveness for pushing her toward a man who had proven so dangerous and asking to visit her in her new home. "Penelope," he embraced her warmly. "You look radiant." "I'm happy, Father," she said simply. "Truly happy." She turned to Beau. "This is my husband, Beau Patterson." The two men shook hands, sizing each other up. "You have quite an operation here from what I've heard," Jonathan said. "I look forward to seeing it." "And I look forward to showing it to you," Beau replied with genuine warmth. "Penny's told me a lot about you." As they walked toward the waiting wagon, Jonathan looked around at the town and the distant mountains. "I can see why you love it here. It's nothing like Boston, but it has its own beauty." "It's home," Penelope said, slipping her hand into Beau's. "In every way that matters." That evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Beau pulled Penelope onto his lap. "Happy, completely?" She rested her head on his shoulder. "I was thinking about that day at the station. If Calvin hadn't sent you, if you hadn't been late." "Fate has strange ways," Beau mused. "I hated being the bearer of such news, seeing the disappointment in your eyes." "It wasn't disappointment," Penelope corrected him. "It was shock, confusion. And something else. Even then, when you said you're mine now, some part of me responded to that, as outrageous as it was." Beau laughed. "I still can't believe I said that. It just came out." "Well, it turned out to be true, didn't it?" She kissed him softly. "I am yours now, and you're mine." As the last rays of sunlight painted the sky in brilliant gold and crimson, Penelope reflected on the journey that had brought her here, from a lonely woman waiting on a platform to the beloved wife of a man who saw her, valued her, and cherished her for exactly who she was. Life in the Arizona Territory wasn't always easy. There would be harsh winters, dry summers, and challenges they couldn't yet foresee. But with Beau at her side, Penelope faced the future with confidence and joy, grateful for the twist of fate that had brought them together. In the distance, a train whistle sounded, a reminder of that fateful day when she had waited alone on a platform, and a late-arriving cowboy had claimed her with 3 simple words that had changed her life forever.